Joining us now, E.W. Jackson. You know E.W., regular of the John Fredericks Show, also has sat in for me many times, does a great show, ran for lieutenant governor in 2013 as the Republican nominee, ran for the U.S. Senate twice, and he is joining us now. E.W. Jackson, great to have you with us, sir.
Hey, great to be with you, John, as always.
E.W., you are the only people in America that are raising the alarm bell about what this lockdown has done as far as stripping Americans of their liberties. I really want to get your take here, E.W., because when the Caucus of the Corn in Virginia tried to take away our guns, there was a massive reaction right here in the Commonwealth. I mean, we had that rally with 50,000 people. I mean, everybody was aware of it. Everybody was buying guns. Everybody was upset by it. Yet, we go into this lockdown, E.W. We're turning the country into a police state. We got politicians telling us when we can go out, when we can go to the store. We have to have papers in our glove box. They're stopping us at checkpoints. We have neighborhood rat lines like the old Soviet system, the KGB, neighbors ratting out neighbors because you walked your dog 3 times that day instead of 2 times. It goes on, yet there's been no reaction to it. It's like this whole country has just been willing to submit and comply to politicians stripping us of our liberties. Can you help explain this phenomenon?
Well, John, Rahm Emanuel's dictum, never let a good crisis go to waste, is really proving to be effective, isn't it?
Yep.
You're right. The sad thing is that Americans, because of the goodwill and the decency of the American people and wanting to be a part of trying to help make sure that this thing doesn't spread, that our neighbors aren't affected, that our elderly are protected, are cooperating. But I think, John, people are beginning to wake up to the fact that this is something far more than addressing a crisis. The numbers are coming down in terms of the projected deaths and the projected number of hospitalizations. We're seeing people starting to realize that, wait a minute, what is taking a walk with my wife and daughter in a park and having a father arrested have to do with curbing the virus? What does taking a drive in my car on a Sunday afternoon and being fined $200 have to do with curbing the virus? I mean, what is closing down churches permanently if they dare to have a handful of people meeting when they've been, quote, according to de Blasio, told not to, have to do with curbing the virus? That the overreach is just astounding. And I'll tell you something, John, I started a movement, this was almost a year ago, probably 8 or 9 months ago, called Stand Against Socialism/Communism, because I've been warning people that the left, the Democrat Party, is really becoming a wholly owned franchise of communism, far left thinking, and that to that extent we may even be seeing the influence, and you mentioned it earlier in your program, of communist China and their ability to insinuate themselves into our culture through purchases of businesses, through support for people in some of their various doings, like you mentioned, NBC having a theme park in China and this sort of thing. We have got a more serious problem right now, John, in my view, than the coronavirus, and that is the virus of Marxism that has infected our body politic. And this thing has got to be dealt with in a very, very vigorous way.
Well, E.W., in order to have this kind of a system, a socialist communist system, there has to be complete submission and compliance amongst the people. And part of it is you rat neighbors out if they're out of compliance. I guess what I want you to, and you touched on it when you said the American people are good people, but I'm trying to understand the lack of liberty pushback on the trampling of our rights, stripping away all freedoms that these politicians have done, and there's been so little reaction to it. And here's my fear. Okay, comply and submit today because it's the right thing to do. Well, then it becomes easier tomorrow.
Oh, yeah. Oh, look, and John, it's the right fear. It's the right concern. I've said from the very beginning, we are setting precedents during this crisis that we are going to come to regret. And I believe we're witnessing that before our very eyes. And look, you know what I think it is, John? I think it's, look, my church has continued to have services. I had the police call me and ask me, was I going to do that? I said, yes. They said, is there anything we can do to persuade you not to? I said, no. But, you know, it wasn't just the authorities. It was neighbors. It was people I know saying, well, you know, you shouldn't be doing that. That's irresponsible. But, you know, what I've said is, first of all, there's no constitutional authority in any governor or mayor to lock us down and tell us to put us in effect under house arrest, number one. Number two, you don't suspend the First and Second Amendments because we have a crisis. So what you do is you go to the American people, you go to the citizens, you say, look, here's what we're facing, here's what we think we need to do, we're asking you, we're recommending to you, and then let each individual sort of assess the situation. Nobody wants their elderly father, mother, aunt, uncle, brother, cousin to get sick. People will do what is right. But this heavy-handed, we're ordering you. You cannot, we will not allow you to leave your home unless you do so with these papers, unless you do so under these circumstances and these circumstances only, is really just ridiculous. And what I'm hoping, John, is that people are beginning to realize that we've been duped, that this thing has been used as an opportunity to further this totalitarian agenda that the left is really so enamored with now.
I agree with you 100%. Listen, there's no doubt this virus is a horrible thing to get. People are dying every day over it. Anybody with any kind of a compromised system is at high risk, and we need, as individual and responsible citizens, to do everything that we can not to spread it. You know, keep our social distancing, wash your hands. You know, if you're comfortable with a mask, put that on. Don't touch your face. Don't touch other people. I mean, look, we all get that. And I think Americans, by and large, are doing a really good job at that. But when you get into this comply and submit or get handcuffs, I mean, I just think you're going into a very dangerous place.
Or a year in jail or a $2,500 fine. I mean, you're threatened with that if you dare seem to be in non-compliance with this. I had a friend of mine called and told by the police that you can't have outside services with people in their cars. And he said, no, I beg to differ. He said, even if I accept the governor's order, I believe that it allows me to do that. And they said, no, you can't do that. And they had to go do a back and forth because here again, these mayors and governors are giving these instructions, and sometimes they're not explained. These cops are not being trained properly. And then they feel that their jobs are on the line if they don't do what they've been ordered to do. So you're right. We've got a lot of soul searching to do when this is all over. Are we a constitutional republic, or are we instead some sort of communist state in waiting?
John Fredericks Radio Network. We're with E.W. Jackson. E.W. Jackson, the president of the STAND organization. E.W. also the Republican candidate for lieutenant governor in Virginia in 2013. Are we training a whole new generation of Americans to do two things? One, submit and comply to whatever politicians say. And number two, in a time of crisis, just look to the government for help.
Yeah, look, John, I'll tell you something. I am profoundly concerned about the history of our country after this coronavirus because I think you're exactly right. And I think we have got to sound the alarm to people that what's happened here is extremely dangerous to us. In fact, I want people to know they can join with me, go to standamerica.us and sign up with us because we're holding weekly meetings, and we're going to do a May 1 live stream at 12 Eastern Time with Trevor Loudon and Jerome Corsi and Claire Lopez and Reverend Raphael Cruz and Alan West to talk about the implications of this insofar as it advances the cause of socialism and communism in our country. And look, you know, John, I wish this weren't true. Bernie Sanders has really had a more profound effect on this country than I'd like to even think, because he's got Bernie-crats all over this country who are running socialists for office right now. This is a movement, and if the American people don't wake up and stand up and say, we will never be a socialist country, we will never be a communist country, we will never be a Marxist country, we're going to look up one day, as Ronald Reagan said, and find out that we're spending our sunset years telling our children about the United States where we were once free.
It's tough to say this kind of things on the radio, but you look at the evidence and it's all there. You go to the coronavirus and the fact now that you've got these politicians that don't want to open the country back up. They shut down the entire economy now in April. EW, I don't think we can get to May. I mean, $2.2 trillion, we're going to add another $2 trillion for, Nancy Pelosi's grab bag and nonsense, Green New Deals and whatever else they're going to throw in it, put the country more in debt. I don't think we can get through May. Small businesses are shuttering now. All of the models they have don't work. I think we got to get back to work. But why is the fake news media and those on the left and the Democrats, why do they want the government to just remain shut down and nobody get back to work? Why is that?
Well, and remember, our governor here in Virginia wants us shut down until June the 10th.
Yeah.
And I haven't talked to a single person who doesn't think that's preposterous.
Right.
It's ridiculous.
Right.
But I think, John, is because they want the American people dependent upon government. They look. It was who was it? Oh, yes, Gavin Newsom, who said, yes, this gives us an opportunity to usher in a new age, a new era of progressive politics. Jim Clyburn said, this gives us an opportunity to place some restrictions in keeping with our vision. So they understand that this is an opportunity that's been dropped in their lap to make more people dependent upon the government, to limit, if not destroy, the free market, free enterprise economy that we've got. And that's right up their alley, because the more government dependence, the more government control, the more power they have, the more people need to look to them to maintain those benefits that they're giving to everybody. And that means, electoral success. So this is, and by the way, not to mention, on the macro level, you've got people like the former prime minister saying this shows that we need one world government. And you've got people like Bill Gates running around talking about we need to implant these digital tattoos and these capsules into people so that we can track their medical condition and if they've had the virus, know whether they get it again. And so they are just using this for all it's worth. Not to mention, John, all those numbers we've been hearing, you mentioned it earlier, all those numbers have been bogus. They have been vastly overstated.
Exactly. And, they told us that the reason we were going to shut down the greatest economy and the greatest job machine the history has ever known, the reason why we were just going to shut that down was to not overrun the healthcare system, not run out of beds, not run out of ventilators, not have to put hospital administrators and doctors in a position where you had to choose who gets the ventilator and who dies. That is not in our DNA. Everybody understood that. Like, we got it. Like, okay, we can't do that. But now we're finding out there is no hospitals being overrun. We have an overstock of ventilators. We have over the beds we need. In New York, Mayor Andrew Cuomo, the governor, got on TV for 2 weeks and said, I need 40,000 ventilators. I need 110,000 beds based on these models. Right now, the peak is over. They're going down. They only have 15,000 hospital beds needed for COVID. They were off by 95,000. 95,000. Yeah. They're sending ventilators to other states that they bought. And the economy is shut down, and you can't go to work. This makes no sense to me.
And they're demanding that states that have one person, like South Dakota, Wyoming, that have one person every 5 or 10 miles in the whole state, why aren't they shut down? They should be shut down too. I mean, it's this broad, sweeping effort to turn America into something else. And, the other thing that I just hope that as we get clear of this, we have a very analytical, clear-eyed look at what we've done so that we don't ever fall into this trap again, John, because that's my concern. China's found out. The left has found out. You want to bring America to its knees. This is how you do it, and we've got to make sure that it can never happen again.
See, that's what you just said. That's the biggest fear that I have. Both of those entities, our enemy, the Chinese, who wants world economic domination. They just figured this out, right? It just fell on their lap, or maybe they were part of it, or maybe they caused it, or maybe it was done in a biolab. I have no idea. I'm not going to conjecture about that. But they're looking at us saying, And then you've got the Democrats are saying, wow, we couldn't beat Trump. There was no way to beat him. All of a sudden we get this virus. Now, if we could just keep the economy shut down and put millions and millions and millions of people out of work, get 35% unemployment, get food lines, bread lines, despair, we can win. That's why they want it shut down in, I don't know, perpetuity. You had some idiot coming on, Emmanuel, somebody the other day saying, well, we have to shut down for 18 months. Well, when you come out, there's no country. It's insane what is going on. EW,
yeah, Rob Emanuel's brother, Ezekiel Emanuel.
Emanuel.
Yeah, we need to be shut down for 18 months. I mean, but here again, these people love power. They don't love America.
Yep.
And so they would rather have America crippled. They would rather have America on its knees as long as the people we're looking up to are them. And we patriots have simply got to stand up and say, we love this country, and we're going to do what's right by our elderly, and we're going to do what's right by our sick people, but we're not going to destroy an entire economy. Not to mention, John, what about all the medical impact, potentially, of millions of people being out of work, not being able to feed their families, being on the brink of financial ruin? I mean, come on. You know, the president said it right when he said, we don't want the cure to be worse than the disease, and yet I think sadly we're pretty much there. I think the president was initially right, but Fauci, of course, was completely against it. I think Easter Sunday was the right time to begin to open this country up.
Has he been vindicated? Because now the models are saying that we're going to hit the peak on Saturday and start to come down on Sunday. The guy was 100% right. Unbelievable, EW. I got to go, but it's great to have you on. I got to have you on weekly because we got the perspective you've got and the courage you have in saying it. A lot of people are scared to death to say this because they don't want to be out of compliance. They don't want to be out of submission. So they're afraid to go on the air and say this. Thanks for doing it, John.
John, people need to be reminded we are the land of the free because we are the home of the brave. So everybody take courage.
Damn right. EW, thanks for being with us.